Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Last session before our lunch, or your whatever it is, your lunch break.
Your meal break. This is building responsive UI with Bootstrap, and alongside John Galloway, I'm still Christopher Harrison.
You sure are.
All right.
So before you dig into, and this is a very...
And I was ready to get started.
I know.
You're going to just
It's a very deep session. There's a lot to it. I don't want to hold up too much. I did want to answer a few questions. So if we can go to my screen real quick. First of all, the code is going to be here. This is our live code as we're working on it during the day. As Christopher's talking, I'm going to be uploading what I just did in the last session. So, be patient. We're trying to get you the code as quick as we can, but it's not pre-staged. This is live stuff.
Live.
Yep. Secondly, a few people have asked about this Bootstrap snippet pack. We both love it. I want to praise Eric Ledbetzimer. I hope I'm saying your name right. He's the guy who wrote it. So this is not a Microsoft product. This is a Visual Studio extension. You can go out and create your own Visual Studio extensions. That's what Eric did. We are thankful to him for doing it. He also published the source code, which is a really cool thing. So all his stuff is out here and explains it. So there's that. We had several people in the previous session say, glyph icons is neat, but we like Font Awesome better. So I'm going to try and mention that later in the day, but it's true. There are some great icon fonts out there, and Font Awesome is definitely a very popular one. So there's that. And they have also Bootstrap cheat sheets to make it easier to integrate in. Finally, somebody asked about how to do hover dropdowns. So generally not the best idea to do on mobile because it's pretty hard to hover on mobile.
That's probably my biggest peeve is the number of times that I will grab my phone and touch on it and it doesn't work because it's expecting a hover.
Yeah. But if you want to do that, here's an example. So I have gone onto Bootsnip. And part of the reason I'm doing this is just to show, here's an example of how you can find this kind of stuff. So here I search for hover. Search for featured, hover, and so there it is. So there's a bunch of them on here, and so here I just picked the first one. And what's nice here is then you can see here's the HTML, and you can see how people are implementing this kind of stuff. Pick different themes and all that. So I just wanted to kind of very common questions. I wanted to knock those out. Let's listen to you talk about.
Actually, let's not.
Okay.
Only because I just want to mention one last thing here, which is right along those lines. And I just want to say it because it'll probably come up, which is there are different events for touch versus click. And so if you are looking to implement that, and some already have, and you probably have seen them, that if you're on a desktop, you have a mouse, you hover, it will then show that down. If you're on a device and you tap on it, then it will bring down the hover menu. The reason for that is because JavaScript will send different events, depending on the browser, of course, for touch rather than for a click. So you can use that to differentiate. So it is possible to make it sort of dual state, if you will, make it work in on phones. And by the way, if for nobody else on the planet, just do it for me. Please. Thank you. All right. In any event, let's get rocking and rolling with Module 3 here, page design. Now, there's been a lot of questions, really all revolving around one thing, and that is the grid. Now, if you're anything like me, and I know I am, chances are when you came into Bootstrap, you kind of looked at that grid and you played around with it and you couldn't quite put your head around exactly what was going on. And if you go take a look at Get Bootstrap, they do, I think, a pretty decent job of explaining exactly what it is that the grids are going to do, what all the different columns are going to do, and so forth. And I hope to kind of walk through a set of demos here that will help drive the rest of this home. So that way, as you're looking to lay out your pages, you're going to be able to figure out exactly what needs to be done. Now, over the course of the demos that I'm going to be doing here, this is sort of the page that I want to simulate here. And it's sort of going back to John's old
MVC,
yeah, where he goes in and sets up a little music store. And so, in theory, a banner up top. I'm not going to worry too much about the banner because John did that earlier with the nav and with the jumbotron. So what I'm going to focus in on instead is going to be this bottom part right here, and that's going to be where all of our grids are. So what I'm going to do is take a look at how to set up our cover art over here, and then set up over here our little title, artist, and a bit of bio information there. I'm then going to have over here on the left-hand side our expert review, and then over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to set up all of our tracks. And you're going to notice here that I'm going to set that up on essentially a separate grid. And this is going to be all the demos that I'm going to be walking through, and I'm going to walk through it kind of step by step. Now, if we're going to lay out our page, we need to understand how all of this is going to work. And for starters, keep in mind that Bootstrap does its layout on a grid. So again, that grid is going to give you that table style there. I just realized that my head is cutting off the top of my table, but that's okay. There's my little table there. But it's going to give you a table style. And what you have the ability to do is identify what data it is that you want to go into those virtual cells. And you have the ability to indicate that you want something to take up a certain number of cells. So again, it's a similar concept. So if you think in terms of a table, you're pointed in the right direction. But, and this is key and this is a very good thing, we're not using tables. We really do want to get away from using tables for layouts. I know it's an old habit that a lot of us have. I had it for a very long time, but it is a habit that we want to break. The next thing is our grid has 12 columns. 12. Always 12. Now, what's nice about this is that it allows you to really just kind of focus on the rough sizing without having to worry about specifics, without having to break it down pixel by pixel how big I want things. Because quite frequently, that's not what we're overly concerned about. We're worried about really relative space, and in particular, relative space compared to other items that happen to be on the page. So this frees us up from having to focus in on, well, I want it to be 300 pixels. Well, not really. I just want it to be 3 times as big as something else over here. And so instead of thinking in terms of pixels, I just think in terms of columns. In addition,
if I can jump in just a second, that answers something somebody asked earlier, is how something about responsive and how well does this work on Retina and all that.
Yep.
And that's a great thing, is that by going instead by percentages rather than absolute pixels, a lot better for working across different DPI and devices. And one other thing, you mentioned 12, and people may be saying, why 12? That's kind of weird. If you think about it, 12 is a great number. Divisible by 2, divisible by 3, divisible by 4. Those are most of the time what you're going to be splitting into, and so it actually works pretty well there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yep. So we got 12 columns. Now, here's where things, I think, start to get a little bit more interesting, which is there are actually 4 grids that each of the 4 screen sizes defined by Bootstrap gets its own grid. There's a grid for large screens, which are going to be 1200 pixels or higher, for medium screens, for small screens, aka tablets, and for extra small, aka phones. So you get 4 separate grids. Now, what this gives you the ability to do is to choose how you want to target your data. So for example, and I'm just going to kick back a slide here and let me erase all the ink that's on there. Let's say, for example, that on a phone that I decided, you know what, I don't want the cover art here. So I just want to go ahead and get rid of that. Or maybe what I want to do is I want to slide all of that over to the other side. Or maybe I want this block here to take up more space than it typically does on a smaller screen. I can go in and do that. So I can say, all right, when you're displaying on a large device, take up this many columns. When you're displaying on a medium, take up this many when you're displaying on a small or an extra small, take up however many it is that's going to be appropriate for the data that you're looking to present. Or to maybe kind of visualize it even a bit better, here is our Bootstrap grids. So up at the very top, there's my large grid, and I get to identify how I want things to be drawn out on there. Down below is my medium grid, so I get to define how I want things on there. I've got my small grid, so I can go ahead and really kind of break down exactly based on screen size, I want to be able to serve up that data. Then again, if I go back a couple of slides, when we're talking about potentially a fair amount of data, some of it's going to be very important, and some of it's going to be less important. And as we all know, we want to put the important information up at the very top, but the less important information down below. And by being able to resize things, by being able to move things around, that's going to make all of that possible. And again, I don't need to think in terms of tables. I don't need to think in terms of pixels. All I have to do is just simply say, hey, when we're on this side, I want it to be placed here, and I want it to take up this many columns. So it makes it just that much easier to deal with it. Now, a lot of people have asked about, well, what in the world does that col MD mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. Remember, in case we haven't driven this home enough yet, so much of this is based on classes. So we have all these different classes that allow us to identify the size. And what's nice is the fact that there's consistency here. You're going to notice a pattern. And the pattern is going to be that the first thing is going to be col, which is short for
column.
Hey. The next is going to be two characters that's going to identify the screen size that we want to target. And then finally, how big we want it to be. So col-LG-6 is going to apply to large, 1200 pixels, and it's going to take up 6 columns. If I said large MD4, that would apply to our medium screens and it will take up 4 columns. And then finally, last but not least, is our col SM12, and that's going to apply to our small screens. And again, in that particular case, that would take up 12 columns. It would be the entire row. Now, this goes back to the slide that we saw earlier this morning or afternoon or evening, I guess, depending on the time zone that you happen to be in. I always love seeing different people comment that they're watching from, India or England or wherever, wherever it is that they happen to be around the world. I always enjoy that. In any event, this, I think, does a really good job of breaking down how big everything is going to be. Now, one little thing that I do want to highlight here is the container width, because we've already seen that class of container, and you're going to notice that on small screens, it's going to be 750, on medium screens, it's going to be 970, and on large screens, it's going to be 1170. So you'll notice there'll be a little bit of white space on each side just to make sure that it displays correctly there. Okay, so let's go back in, take one more look here at our little site design, and you're going to notice that there is our cover art. There is our little spot with our title, artist, and bio. Let's go in and take a look at doing that. Now, bear with me, because this is probably going to push me around, and I also need to go grab a file real quick. I actually threw this together earlier, so I just want to go. There we go. Let me make sure. Actually, I already downloaded them. I think I did. I've got a lot of windows up. There we go. Images. Okay, so let's do this. All right, so while we were at break, one of the things that I did inside of Visual Studio is I created a brand new empty HTML project. Now, one of the things that I always like to do is just get it down to brass tacks, just get it down to its barest essentials here. So this is 100% just an empty HTML project. So I'm not going to do MVC here. I'm not going to do web forms. I really have nothing that's pre-built, all set and ready to go for me. So I'm going to have to do all of this completely from scratch. Now, I am going to drag in my images, so that way I have them.
Yep.
And I'm going to add in the NuGet package for Bootstrap. So I'm just going to real quick right-click, manage NuGet packages, and let's go to online, and we'll just do a real quick search for Bootstrap. Chugga.
This is great because we had people asking about this. And this is also a good answer for people who are saying, can I use this with Visual Studio 2012 or even 2010? Right.
Yep.
And because this is NuGet, yes, you can. You can pull this into anywhere. It's just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Exactly.
And another thing, if I can jump in super quick,
Please.
is people might think, why would I use NuGet to install, why would I use a package manager to install JavaScript, and CSS, and HTML? And the reason is because of these updates. So it makes it very easy. You can update a package. It'll notify you when a new package is available. Right-click, update package, boom.
And that's it. Now, the last little thing to mention here, and this is one of those things about working in NuGet, is that a lot of people will upload different things into NuGet, and a lot of times I find people get confused about exactly which one it is that they should go grab. I have a very simple philosophy when it comes to this, is just grab the one up at the very top. Because 9 times out of 10, that's the one that you want. And this is a perfect example of that, is that this one right here, the one that actually, coming from Twitter there is flagged as copyright 2012 Twitter, you're going to notice that's version 3, and we want version 3.2.
Yeah, and you also do have that download count, which is handy also.
Yeah.
And the updated date.
Exactly. Yeah, that chances are the more that it's been downloaded, the more popular it is.
Up.
It's probably the one that you want.
Yep,
absolutely. Okay. So what I'm going to do is simply click Install. And while this is doing its thing in the background, this is another great advantage to NuGet, is that unlike just making a reference, it has the ability to add additional files and make changes to your project, which just adding in a reference can't do. And then finally, last but not least, if I click on Updates here, this will show me any updates that might be available. So if I wanted to use jQuery 2.1.1, and you know what? Let's live on the edge here. Let's just go ahead and grab it. Then it's very easy for me to go in and update all of that. So it just makes life easier for me. Okay. Now let me go in and just create a brand new add an HTML page here. And I'm going to give this a title of album details. And I'm going to hit OK. And now let's go grab the couple of files that we're going to need. So I'm just going to go under my content here, and I'm going to want my Bootstrap min, and we'll just put that right there. Perfect. And I'm going to want my Bootstrap theme. Just go ahead and grab that. And then a real quick Control-K, Control-D to have it reformat the document, put everything back together again. And then down at the very bottom here, I need 2 scripts. I need my jQuery script. Just going to drag and drop that. And I'm going to need my Bootstrap script, and I'm going to drag and drop that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if you are using MVC, MVC will automatically do that. It will bundle everything for you and kind of make your life that much easier. The last thing that I do want to mention, however, for my Visual Studio peeps out there, is I'm going to add in a brand new script here, just JavaScript file, and I'm going to give this a name of _references, and I'm going to hit OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out the Bootstrap and the jQuery files into the references file.
Yep.
What that will do is that will give you full IntelliSense for, or as good as it can be with JavaScript. It will give you IntelliSense for those JavaScript files. Mm-hmm. So if you're ever in there and you're trying to figure out, well, why isn't this giving me IntelliSense? That's all that you need to do. Add in _references under scripts, and then just drag and drop out the script files into there. Very easy.
Yep.
Okay. So now, let's go in and start to set everything up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this just from scratch here. So I'm just going to say div and class equals row. That again, think in terms of a table, that all of our columns are going to be contained inside of rows. I'm going to want my image. So I'm just going to say img. And while we're on Visual Studio things, if you see that little piece of paper and that little pair of scissors there, what that's trying to indicate to you is that this is also a snippet. So if you see that and you go tab, tab, it'll automatically expand that out for you. So we'll go in and say tab, tab, and I'm going to say /images. Whoops. Dang it. That gets me every time. /images. And then I want my album. And then on the alt text, I'm going to say album. There we go. And then I'm just going to add on my class. And I'm going to say call MD and 2. Perfect. And now let me go ahead and fire up my page. And you'll notice that it's up in the upper left there. There is my little album. Now you're also going to notice that it's not giving me any white space there or there. The reason for that is I didn't put it into a container. Now, one of the little challenges that people sometimes find with Bootstrap is they're constantly having to put a div tag around whatever the content actually is. Visual Studio offers you a great way to do this. Control K, Control S for surround.
Yeah.
And then I can go HTML and I can go div and hit enter, and poof, now there's a div tag. Now the only real catch here is, and this is both a boon and a bane, both a good thing and a bad thing. The nice part about this is not every tag that you might be looking for is contained inside of there. So fortunately, you could just go in and retitle that to be whatever it is that you might want. So maybe I want an anchor, and you'll notice that if I escape out of that, it'll automatically update the anchor down at the very bottom. That's good news. The bad news, however, is that sometimes you'll go in and you'll say class equals, and whatever you want your class to be, I really don't care. And then you hit escape, and you'll notice that it will automatically update the closing tag with that as well. So what I try to just keep into the habit of, if I just want the div tag, is just again Control K, Control S, HTML, div, hit enter, and then just hit escape.
Yes.
And then if you hit escape, now it's unlinked it. Yep. And so now you can go in and say class equals, and I'll go in and say container, hit save, hit refresh, and now you'll notice that it's pushed over to the side. I still have the white space up top. I really should throw in a Jumbotron, but again, I'm going to try and keep this a bit simpler. So now, let's go in and let's add in our content here. So we'll just go ahead and say div, and we'll say class equals call MD and 10. Beautiful. And then let's go ahead and say H2 and band name, whoever it is that they happen to, let's go album name. There we go. And H3, this will be the band name, and I'm going to say 45 RPM spacers for anybody who gets the reference there. Again, yet another age test
right
there. But in any event, we'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll just go ahead and put in a basic little paragraph. The band formed when they were young, as time went on, they got older. Perfect. Okay. It'll work. And so now there is my next little spot. And again, I just want to highlight, because we'll come to about there, that there is my there's my container, and it would take up all 10. So if I went in and maybe put it in some basic text, and you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. Bacon Ipsum. There we go. There's my Ipsum lorem generator.
Yep.
Bacon Ipsum. Gotta love it. Go. There we go. Give me bacon. All right. And let's just go ahead and grab that, and then we'll just throw that in there. Beautiful. Okay. So now let's come back over here, hit refresh again, and now you're going to notice that it's taking up my, my space. Now, what you're also going to notice is that when I go in to resize things, it's automatically going to collapse everything for me into a single column. The reason for that is it's making the move from desktop to tablet. When it's making the move from desktop to tablet, or basically from MD to SM, from medium to small, it's assuming that you've got, well, a smaller screen space. So chances are you're not going to have a whole lot of extra width there. So let's just go ahead and stack things one on top of another. So if you want to maintain that spacing there, if you want to maintain those columns, or maybe go in and tweak them, you'll also need to add in the classes for small as well. So we'll just go in and say SM and 2. And I really didn't need to highlight that. And then we'll just go ahead and say col SM, and let's go ahead and say 10. And now let's again save. Let's go in and hit refresh again. And now what you're going to notice is that as I resize it, it's now maintaining that size. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't do that when we get down to extra small. So let's just go in and say XS and XS, hit save, come back over, hit refresh. Now you're going to notice 2 columns, 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 regardless of how big the screen is. So the point that I really want to highlight here is if you're only going to set 2 sizes, set MD, that will cover your desktops. Set XS, that will cover your handheld devices, including tablets. So if you're going to do nothing else, if you just want your handheld devices to look one way and you want your desktops to look another way, MD and XS. Cool.
Great.
All right. You had that look on your face like you were going to say something.
Well, there's a few questions coming in. I was wondering, Josh had an interesting question here. He said, how do you handle if you want to split a single row into multiple rows for mobile? So say you added col XS12 to all your cells to make them full width, and then you're going to have a row that takes up more than 12 cells.
Yeah, there's a handful of different ways that that you can play with that. One of the advantages, and some people will look at it and just look at it as a frustration, but one of the advantages to having that 12 columns is if you go past 12, what Bootstrap is going to do is just put that right on to the next row. So if that's what you were looking to do, that maybe I had column, 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 and maybe what I wanted to do instead, and it's going to be easier, I think, if I just draw this real quick. So let's say that, here's my space, and I originally had something here, I had something here, and I had something here. But what I wanted on a smaller device was to maybe have it go like this, where I've got something here, and then full space down below. A very easy way that you could do that is set these two to be 6 each, and then set the bottom one to be 12. And I could actually demo that here real briefly. And keep in mind that, we could stay here all day and just demo different things. Let me just get some more bacon ipsum here. I just want a little bit of text. There we go. And boom. Perfect. Okay. And let's go in and say call MD. It would probably help if I put a class on that. Class equals details. Call MD, and I have 2, I have 8, I have 2. And then I could also say call SM, or XS rather, and say 12. Okay, so now let's just go back over here, hit refresh. So now you'll notice it's off on the far right-hand side there. That's the data that I just added. Let me go ahead and shrink that down, and now you're going to notice it's down there at the very bottom. Or maybe if you wanted to do that the other way, then what you could do, let's just make the album take up the entire top, is that I could go in and set that to be 12, and then come back over here, and let's say 8, and then let's say 2. And again, hit save, come back, hit refresh. Now you're going to notice there's my album up at the very top, huge album, and then scroll on down, and then there's the brand new 2 columns down at the very bottom there. So there's a lot of different ways that you could go in and do that.
Yeah, and that answers a question we've had here also is what two related questions. One is, can I add multiple grid, XS and LG and MD to one element? And yeah, definitely, and that's exactly what you're showing. So you're defining on one element multiple grid classes.
Yep.
The other question is, what if I don't define a grid? So if I only define medium, what happens on small or large? And so then that's going to show, that's going to create a new column for that one. So a full rows, excuse me, for that.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay. Let me go back to my slides here. There we go. Okay. Now, this has been another big question that's come through on the chat window, which is how do I get multiple rows? How do I get nested grids? Well, here's what's awesome is to a certain extent, Bootstrap doesn't care what you do. Here's the rule. We'll make it very simple. Every row has 12 columns. Period. That's it. So let's actually just take a look at it. So I want Visual Studio. All right, let's go ahead and create a brand new row here. Let's make sure I put it in my container. That's probably going to help. Okay, so we'll go ahead and say div class equals row. Boom. And then let's go in and say div, and we'll say class equals call MD, and let's say, I don't know, 4. That's probably going to look good. Call XS4. There we go. And let's say H2 expert review. So you can tell it's an expert review because it tells you that right there. And then let me go get some bacon. Bacon. I closed out bacon. Oh, wait. Nope. I had it right over there. All right. Let me go get some bacon. There we go. All right. Perfect.
Bacon.
It's bacon. All right. It's getting closer to a mealtime here.
Yeah.
HTML div. There we go. KS HTML div. Okay, cool. So there's my little spot for my expert review. And now what I want to do is I want to display the tracks that are inside of there. So let's go in and say div class equals, and we'll go ahead and say call MD and 8 and call MD and 8. There we go. And then H2, and this is going to be our tracks. And then inside of here, I want my tracks to display. Now, if you remember, the way that I want my tracks to display is I want the title and I want the time. And I want the title and I want the time. That sounds like a perfect job for columns.
Yep.
So what I can do is I can just create div class equals row. Just create a brand new row.
This is funny. You're answering questions as they're coming in. People are asking, can I nest things? Or what if I want more than 12 and all that kind of stuff. So there you go.
Excellent. So just like that. So there is my my brand new row. Let me go in and now simply say div, and we'll say class equals call MD, and let's say 6 is probably going to be good. And we'll say track 1, and then we'll go ahead and say div, and we'll say class equals, and we'll say call MD. And I'm going to keep it a little bit shorter there. I'm not going to take up all the space, just because I don't think it's going to look really good. But it was a great song, and it ran too long, so we had to cut it down to 3:05. Again, obscure reference purely for my own entertainment and then we'll say 6:05. Okay, so now let me just go in, hit save. Where is my little album? Whoops, that wasn't it. There we go. There's my little album. And did I hit save? I did. There we go. Just had to hit refresh. Perfect. So now what you're going to notice here, and I'll probably tweak everything now that I'm sort of seeing it here, but over here is our little expert review. Over here is our tracks. And as I mentioned, each one of these is now its own separate row, and each row has 12 columns. So I'm able to identify how it is that I want to lay everything out very easily there. And by the way, while we're here, let's also talk a little bit about positioning a bit. That maybe what I want to do is I want to push this over a little bit to the right. I can do that very easily by utilizing offset. So let's just go in and we'll say call MD offset, and let's say offset and 2. Just like that. And now I'm going to need to make sure that I update this because I'm going to miss 2 columns.
Yep.
I'm already using 4 from before, so doing some real quick math, that's going to give us 6. this time around. So now we'll go ahead, hit refresh, and now you're going to notice that's pushed over a bit more to the right side, giving me that bit of white space there. And again, you could go in and keep playing around with this. I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to argue that this is the best design ever, but I think it does at least sort of point us down the right path of how we might visualize data and how we can start to use all of this.
Right, and again, because you're not doing this via tables, it's pretty flexible.
Exactly.
Like you can go in and you can tweak these. I want to move this. Want this to take up half the size and all that. This would take you forever to change later if it was in a table.
Absolutely. So let me actually kick back to slides here, just to kind of use that to...
You may have noticed this. You have call MD8 twice. Did you already catch that?
Oh, I have call MD twice.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you. See, we're really cooking on this show.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So with that, this all leads us perfect into controlling placement. So again, with our offset, what we can do is just simply say, well, we want to skip a couple of columns. So here's our table out here. Our offset is just simply going to say skip 2 columns. Very simple. You're also going to notice pull and push. What pull is going to give us the ability to do is to typically target something over there, pull it back. What push is going to do is typically have something here and push it out. Because we're not using tables here.
Yeah.
We're laying everything out in div tags. And what's going to happen is it's going to go top to bottom and left to right, which is perfect.
Again, this is the benefits of a table with the benefits of a float.
Exactly.
So I can push and pull things. I can swap left and right. You never do that in a table.
Exactly. Because let's say that, this works just fine on a big device. My expert review here, my tracks here. But one of the things that we've highlighted is when we're on a smaller device, we want to make sure that we highlight the important stuff. Now, if I'm just looking up information on an album, which is going to be more important, the review or the track data? Probably the track data. So what I'm going to want to have happen is I'm going to want to have, again, on a smaller device, my tracks take up a full 12, and I'm going to want my expert review, and this is going to be the key, to slide in down below. That's what I want to have happen. So the end result here is I want on a single column for small devices, is I want my track info to be displayed there, and I want my review to be displayed there. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. Now, if I go back to Visual Studio here, what you're going to notice is I can very easily push things down. Now, one of the things that we already highlighted, we did this demo earlier, is I could just say XS12 and XS12. And remember that when you go beyond 12, 12 plus 12 is 24 for those of you scoring at home. When you go beyond 12, what Bootstrap is going to do is just simply go to the next row, go to the next row, go to the next row.
Yep.
So when I bring this up, and I shrink this down, sure enough, it went to the next row. So my expert review is here, my tracks are here. Now, this is a bit of a problem for me because I really want this down here. Well, that's not the order that I put it into. So what I want to do is I want to pull things around. So let's go in. And let's say that for our expert review, I want to push that down. So I'm going to say call XS push, and let's say 12. Push that down. And for my tracks, I want to pull that up. So call XS push, and 12. Now, I'm going to try and do my best to keep all of my classes clean here. You're going to notice that as time goes on, I'm going to struggle a little bit with this. And this is going to be one of the big things that John's going to be talking about later. Now, one of the biggest things that we want to be able to do, is we want to try and keep all of this as clean as possible, but unfortunately, Bootstrap uses a lot of classes. With less, what we're going to see is we can clean a lot of this up. Makes our lives a lot easier. Okay, so now let me go in and hit save, hit refresh, and now you're going to notice that everything's kind of pushed off to the right-hand side there.
Yep.
Not really what we wanted.
No.
What I find to work a lot easier, because when you start pushing and pulling 12 here, whoops, I suppose I really should do this. I'm going to update that. I just noticed I had a mistake there. It really wasn't what I wanted. But you're going to notice even though I did that, it's still not going to fix it. I still have a problem. Mm-hmm. And by the way, unlike a lot of the other mistakes you're going to see me make, I did this one on purpose. One of the little...
It's easy to say.
One of the little things that I find easier if I'm trying to rearrange order when I get down to a smaller screen size is to put it into that order first and then push-pull for the bigger screen size. Or, in other words, let me get rid of the push-pull here. That's going to go away, and that's going to go away. I'm going to take my expert review and I'm going to cut and paste that down below. Okay? So now let's come back over here, and I'm just going to hit refresh here, and I'm just going to go to big screen. Big screen. There we go. So you're going to notice expert review on the right, tracks over on the left, not really what we wanted. Mm-hmm. So now, let me... I'm just going to... No, I'll leave it. I'm going to get rid of that call. Give me 1 second here. I'm just going to simplify this just to make my demo work a little better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange the order on the medium screen. And I'm going to do that by saying call MD push. And I'm going to push it over 6. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say call MD pull and 6. So push to the right, pull to the left. And then when I come back over and I hit refresh, now you're going to notice my review is back on the left, which is where I wanted it. My tracks are on the right, which is where I wanted it. And most importantly, when I resize it, now you're going to notice my tracks are up on the top.
Yeah.
Now you're also going to notice one last thing here. We may as well fix this while we're here, is that unfortunately, my tracks are now vertical. We don't have the grid there anymore. Remember that what happens automatically when you resize to that smaller screen is that it will automatically create that single column. So just get yourself into this habit. XS 6 and call XS and 3 and oops, there we go. Copy. By the way, that's another really cool Visual Studio trick. Hold down Alt,
Yep.
click drag. Now we'll do a box select for you. Mm-hmm. Copy, and then click wherever you want to paste it. Paste, which when you're dealing with Bootstrap and a bunch of classes,
pretty handy.
That makes life a whole heck of a lot easier.
So I knew about the Alt Select for copy, but I did not know. I've been doing Alt Select for the entire column to paste it in. I didn't know that. Very nice.
Yep. And by the way, while we're here, one other very cool thing is, let's say that you had a whole bunch that were vertical like that and you wanted to go in and change it. So maybe I wanted this to be 6 and 6 or 5 and 5, let's say. So Alt Select, and then if I just type 5, you'll notice that they both update.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, yep, pretty slick. Okay. All right, I'm going to kick back to slides here. And all right. So there is our placement. Now, the last big thing as far as layout goes that we want to talk about is controlling visibility. Now, the way that we do visible or control visibility is by flagging something as hidden or visible. And what that's going to do is make all the opposite the reverse. So if I say I want it to be hidden for XS, it's going to be visible for medium.
Yep.
If I say visible for medium, it's going to be hidden for XS. So you can show hide very easily based on your screen size. You can also, by the way, do this for printing. Because after all, when people go to print your page, you want to make sure that you get rid of things like navigation. Because after all, it's not like they're going to be able to hold up the piece of paper and tap on it and have it automatically update the text on there to be whatever it is that that you might have been talking about. That'd be really cool if it did, but unfortunately, that's not possible. So what I want to do to close out my, my layouts here is I want to hide that image on a smaller device. Now, yes, because somebody's going to say it, there's other ways that I could do this.
Yeah.
You know, that I could go in and I could take a look at the header information, the browser string that came up. I could detect the type of browser and then just not serve the image in the first place. You're absolutely right. I was
just to be that annoying guy that, because there are those people are, whatever. There are responsive image classes as well.
Exactly.
You just need something to explain how to show this layout. So
exactly.
We'll go with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you could, you know, solve this. This is just the way that I'm going to solve it here.
Yep.
And I'm just going to hide this. So I'm just simply going to say, and I love this. Is just the IntelliSense. It's just fantastic. But in any event, I'm just going to say hidden XS. I'm going to come back over to my browser. There we go. I've got like 8 browser windows open now. So now if I shrink this down to a smaller size, now you're going to notice, sure enough, my image went away. So just like that, my little image went away. Awesome. All right, there's our layouts. Now, I want to close everything out. I'm going to go back to my slides here by just talking real briefly about forms. That one of the very nice things about our forms is that, once again, it's just simply classes. And a lot of the functionality, first of all, that you're going to be looking for is already built into HTML5. And this goes back to a theme that we had earlier. You can use jQuery. You can use HTML5. You can use all of this with Bootstrap. So how do you get a placeholder to appear in a text box? Placeholder equals whatever you want the text to be. Done. How do you get the little @the.com to appear on the keyboard? Type equals email. Done. That's HTML5. Keep using HTML5. It will work. All right. Now, the couple little catches, however, is you are going to notice that by default, Bootstrap wants to use a vertical display, which is not necessarily a good thing. But it does want to focus highlighting, which is a good thing. And as with everything else, it is relatively easy to customize, that it's just going in and adding in the appropriate classes. Okay, so let's go in and take a real quick look at setting up a simple form here. So let me get out of my slides, discard my ink. There we go. And you know what? Let's real quickly here, right-click, add HTML page, album, entry. There we go. And let's go in and drag out our couple of items here. And perfect. There we go, and I want my Bootstrap, and I want my jQuery. Okay, so let's just go in and kind of take a look at this real quickly here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in a form. There we go, and then I'm just going to go ahead and say div. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I am going to contain this, KS, HTML div, and let's go ahead and put this into a container, class equals container, and then let's, one more time, KS, HTML div, and let's contain that inside of a row, class equals row. Beautiful. Okay, so now, I'm sort of changing my mind here. Don't mind me. There we go. I'm going to do it this way. Okay, so there's my little form. By the way, Control-K, Control-D, format document, Control-K, Control-D. Let me go in and real quick say label. And I'm going to say for equals, and let's say title. There we go. And title. And then let's go ahead and say input type equals text and ID equals title. And we'll just close that out. There you have it.
Yep.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to save this, and I'm going to hit Control F5, and you're going to notice there's my title up at the very top. And it doesn't really do a whole lot. It's not giving me kind of that nice little display there. I want to do two things. Number one, I'm just going to add in role equals form. Just tell it that it's a form. And then on that input box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say class equals form control. And by my going in and doing that, now what you're going to notice is that I get the bigger text box with the rounded corners. Sort of an inside joke if anybody who's listening knows the story behind rounded corners. Buy me lunch sometime, I'll tell you the story. But in any event, I've got my little input box with my rounded corners. All I had to do was just add in this little form control. The one little catch, however, is that unfortunately you're going to notice that it's vertical. And that's typically not the way that I want to see my controls. I want them to be horizontal. Well, stop me if you've heard this before. I need to add a class that I just need to go in and say form horizontal. And then I can go in and hit save and hit refresh. And you're going to notice it's still one on top of each other. The reason for that is I need to identify how I want all of this to actually look. So I'm just going to say col and MD, and I'm just going to do MD for right now. I'm just going to make my life a little bit easier. Also say col MD and 2. I do need to surround this with a div tag. I need to surround this with a div tag. I can't specify this on the input. I have to surround this with a div tag. So I'm going to say class equals col MD and 10. We'll hit save, come back, hit refresh. Why are you not? Oh, I forgot one little thing. Form group. There we go. Now, that will... I'm missing a class. That's what it's going to be. Form group. I've got my label. I've got all of that. 2 plus 10 is 12. Class equals form horizontal, form group. I am missing something. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make my life easier. Control K, Control X, Bootstrap, and I want form group, horizontal. What am I missing?
It says check. Some people are saying check the label.
And my label is good.
So you have form group input.
That's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
This is always that yeah, see, let's see, control label doesn't actually matter, although it is nice because it does better highlight the fact that it's a label. Mm-hmm.
So form group and row. Is it because?
Yeah, it's because I've got it in a row. That's right. You know, this is the one little downside to going from the layout demo straight into the form demo.
Right.
Is my brain is on, okay, don't forget row, don't forget row, don't forget row, don't forget row. So I didn't forget row. The one part that I forgot, form group is automatically a row. That's why you don't need it. Yeah, there we go. So we'll just explode that on the screen there. Form group is automatically a row. There we go. That was the little part that I forgot. Now if I go in, I'm still missing something. Go in and hit refresh. It's still not working. What's different? Form group, label for class. The MD, I should be good there. The SM versus MD
one is
doesn't
medium
matter.
and
That shouldn't matter. I'll go in and update it, but it won't matter. SM and SM.
there you go.
Wait a minute. Oh, ha!
We need a
I'm
laugh
good now.
track. Can
You
we
know-
get laugh tracks added?
The last little mistake that I made, and this is just because I had my browser window too small, is I was just doing MD just out of habit.
Right.
And in fact, let me go back and update that back to be MD again, and I apologize for this. But now if I hit refresh there, you'll notice it stays there. It was that I resized down to small.
Oh.
Remember, small is automatically going to go to single column.
Right.
There we go. So in all actuality, this sort of works out really well because it gave us the opportunity to see everything at resizing there with our forms. In any event.
And thanks to all who were playing along at home. There were several people saying, hey, what's small screen? They're just coming up actually as you typed it.
Yeah. So that's funny. In any event, so the takeaway from that module, again, tables but not tables. 12 columns, automatic screen sizing. Take advantage of all of that. John's been manning the chat window here, and I'd be willing to bet that if not the most, it's certainly in the top 3. Popular question in there is probably, how do I change the number of columns that are available? And my answer is going to be very simple. Can you in theory? Yes, of course. It's all CSS at the end of the day. Don't. Stick with it. That you're going to notice you still get all the flexibility that you might want when laying everything out. And also, as John mentioned, 12 is a pretty good number. It's not like 3, which is a magic number, but again, showing my age. But 12 is a very good number because it's divisible by 2, it's divisible by 3, it's divisible by 4. So the typical ways that you're going to want to divide things out, it's all going to be there.
Now, if I can jump in just for a second, there was one good question.
I like that you raise your hand.
Yeah. Teacher, I'm the only one
Mr.
here.
Galloway, you have a question?
Thank you. One person said, well, what about 7 if I have a calendar 7 days of the week? That's actually a decent one. That was the first where I was like, okay, fine. So you could just do 1 through 7. Another thing I just want to
You
point
could
out.
also offset and kind of push that around as well. Yeah.
Just so for people who are dying of curiosity, if we can cut to my screen here, up in the header, if I click on Customize, and I'll be showing this later, but if I click on Customize, and then it's going to spin away because Christopher's downloading something over there, and then there's this less variables, and if I scroll down and click on Grid System, I can actually change the number. So here I'm generating my own version of Bootstrap. You can change everything in here. This is a preview of coming attractions, and I'm not going to go any more here.
Right.
But yes, you can do it.
Yes. But again, think long and hard about it. Yeah. You know? All right. With that, I don't know about you guys, but I'm starving. So what do you say we grab a meal, and we're going to return at the top of the hour. John, you've got a burger.
Yes, that is about the size of the burger I'm hoping for.
Even more. There you go. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But anyway, let's go ahead and grab a meal, and we'll see you guys at the top of the hour.